All right, I'm sitting down with the man on the heels of NADA 2022, the man who rolled through like the frickin' syndicate at the show with his crew. I was fortunate enough to be a part of that. Super grateful for the invitation. The founder of Automotive.com. Super exciting announcement that I'll let him share. Paul J. Daly. What's going on, my man?
What is up? I cannot believe that we got to spend so much time together. Like, we have been talking about, like, hey, it'll be nice to spend a little time together. And we ended up, like, just spending hours and hours and hours together, rocking the show, interviewing people, getting tackled by people. It was awesome.
And meeting so many new people.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, can we just dispel something for a minute? I got tackled.
We're not the office. All right, we just got tackled by Glenn Lundy.
You quickly were like, sit. My reflexes, you have reflexes like a cat. I was like, I will be the brick wall.
No, the brick wall, it's like looking up like, huh? Look at the lights up there. Boom!
And then you get up. I don't know if you noticed this. You're like, we just got tackled by Glenn Lundy. I'm like,
all right, we just got tackled by Glenn Lundy.
We just got tackled?
The royal we, right?
Yeah.
Automotive Safety Union just got tackled because Michael got tackled.
Oh my gosh. That was so much fun though. It was cool to see a couple of things, and I want to draw attention first to, you and I are marketing guys. We both have our marketing teams, and we do, we have client partners, and we talk a lot about scrappiness. Mm-hmm. Witnessing your level of scrappiness firsthand was very, very inspiring. Getting to sit down with your team and legitimately seeing them do everything on their iPhones and then throwing it into Instagram right away and just like post, get it out. That was super inspiring. But what stood out in my mind is dealerships can be doing this. It doesn't have to always be so elaborate and whatever. But like, how did you guys get to that point? What was the methodology behind, like, how do you let go, I guess, of perfectionism in lieu of?
It's funny conversation to have after we just spent 5 minutes talking about dialing in the gate and compressor on podcast microphones. Okay, so perfection is the enemy of posted is something that I always think in context of. And as did I lose you? Or are you still there?
You're still there.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're just being fancy with production. So, perfection is the enemy of posted. And as a former recording artist and someone who really made my way into the creative world through making music or, audio, I've come to really appreciate the statement. It's never completed, only released. Never finished, only released. You have to decide at some point when you're going to let it out into the world, or you'll tweak forever. And then you'll tweak so much that you'll go back to the version before you started tweaking, and it sounds way better than after all your tweaking, right? Because you lose perspective. And so in the world we live in now, I realized that having 10 things out into the world that are like 80% of the ideal of where I would like it is so much more valuable to connect with people than having one thing out or two things out that I'm like super proud of. Because, the shot to the ego that I always take is that the thing I spend a lot of time on that I think is going to do really well rarely does really well. It's usually the thing that I just put out there, because you cannot predict what people are actually going to connect with. So how do you get past it? You have to swallow your pride, really, because not wanting to do that is a level of creative ego that we have. I went through the Vayner Mentors program with Gary Vaynerchuk, and where I so distinctly remember him putting me in my place in a very Gary Vaynerchuk type of way. So we're sitting there, and it's funny, and this is a scenario. My wife was even in the room at this point, right? So we're at we're at a strategy meeting. We're at Hudson Yards. We're in New York City, and we're talking about LinkedIn. We're talking about Facebook. We're talking about B2B marketing to other auto dealers. And at the time, I still don't have a big Instagram following. It's, sub 3,000 people.
Right.
And at the time I had 400 or something like that. And I was like, how do I, get my Instagram account to something respectable? right? And at the time, something respectable to me is always right a few more than you already have, right?
Hmm.
No matter like how much money is enough money. Well, just a little bit more than I have now. And Gary's like, well, he's like, if you need to do that for your ego, then we can talk about that, but it's not going to help your business. And I was like, skirt. And
But can you
so
say it like him? Have you nailed a Gary Vee impression at this
I
point?
haven't. I don't even try.
Okay,
I
that's
don't
fair.
even try.
So I
You know,
imagine the register was probably pretty high.
well, no, the opposite is true because when
Okay.
you get Gary in a private meeting,
Yeah.
like my experience has been, he brings it
Mm,
way down, and then over time ramps right when he gets excited about something. But when he says he listens, like he really listens, and he's lower key and quieter. And granted, you see so much behind the scenes with Gary, you would think, well, I kind of know him, but like, hey, he changed my paradigm. So no, he was just kind of leaning back in his chair, right? He's leaning back in his chair and he's playing with the curtain cord that he always does in Hudson Yard. You can see him doing it, and he's just sitting
right.
there against the windows and he's playing with this thing. And he was just like, well, if you feel like you need that for your ego, then yeah, we can talk about that. And it wasn't in a judgmental kind of way either.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
He was just really litmus testing me. He's like, well, is it important to you? If so, I can tell you. Right. And at that moment, I was like, yeah, I guess it's not important. And we just kept moving.
It's so true. And I mean, I know even in the last, however many years of producing this show, I've gone through so many phases of ego because I'm like, I have to have the right set and the right lights and it's
Man,
the,
man.
yeah, but it's this perceived like, what does that mean at the end of the day? And did it actually get in the way of me doing what, like Tim Zion was showing me, where it's like, rip this sucker out, flip that thing into Instagram and post it. Also, though, to your point about ego, I mean, we've even seen phases of this in automotive. Maybe there's still some that subscribe to this, but it's like, oh, he's only got 3,000 followers. Like, what does that even mean? And it's like, dude, I've seen people with 100,000 followers who still don't get any engagement. Like, what does that
Or the
actually
engagement
mean?
they get is garbage, right? It's spam engagement. Because when you get accounts that have more engagement, and more, I'll see like going, it's like everyone's like selling you like it's a bot just posting, I don't know,
Yes.
buy my
Right.
product.
Yeah, exactly. Post this to LasVegasNudes.com. You're like, why?
And hashtag Mike
Why?
Cirillo.
Hashtag-
And so no, but to your point about like you do see this in automotive, and I think we've been conditioned as society to credit followers to credibility, and that's
Right.
not a straight line. And the smaller industry, like the smaller you boil it down, so pop culture, right? Followers, you look at a Kardashian or somebody like that, right? You're like, well, hundreds of millions of followers, or tens of millions, or millions, right? You start to look at that and you're like, well, that's cultural credibility. But when you're thinking industry, the smaller the industry gets, actually, the fewer followers you actually need to make an impact. Um, you know, and I think it is in industry in automotive, it's about focus, right? Who are the people following is a big deal. Like yes, maybe somebody only has 2,000 followers on LinkedIn, but those 2,000 followers could be like the most relevant players in automotive. And that's what matters. Like what
Hmm.
matters is not counts, it's business development, right? Because all of the things that I've done in social media, the real value of all of those is business development.
Yeah. And I mean, in that context, you realize, ha- we went through this phase of bigger equals more. And to your point, no, because I can only do meaningful business development with a few, like, especially in the context of my business. I'm not an influencer and I don't have a shoe line to sell. Like, I don't have a big, broad, like, everyday use product.
Yeah.
And so, what does it matter if I have 150,000 followers on LinkedIn versus 500, or for that matter, 30? But this group of 30 is so tight knit and we do amazing things together. I love how you said it's not a straight line.
It isn't a straight line because, like, when you put it that way, there is a level of, I'm just trying to think of like, who do I pay attention to and who do I think most people pay attention to quickly? I think there's a baseline somewhere in there,
Right.
right? Like if I well, first of all, LinkedIn algorithm won't let me come across you if you only have 30, probably. Um, but there is like this baseline of work and effort you have to put in order to like put a credible showing. probably like a lot of people, you put some time in, or you come across a new account and you can look in recent posts, right? Like, well,
Hmm.
what are they doing? Are they posting? Right? What are they posting? So there has to be like, so I think if you show up with 30 followers, probably not paying attention. If you show up with 500, maybe. If you have 1,000, right? And then that's going to vary per platform. But all of that still, I teach my son this, and I've taught him this for years. When he's 15 now, and he started making content on a platform. Oh man, what was it called?
The kids
Oh
call it TikTok, Paul.
no, no, no. What was it called? It was like pre Roblox, and
Oh,
before,
okay.
and they could like post these little animated videos, and I would just always remember telling him, was like, hey, more than all the other stuff you pay attention, if you make good content that is relevant to the audience, people will always pay attention, right? And maybe not the first time or the second time, but you, again, back to the first part of the conversation, you never know what's going to pop. And so the ego has to be pulled out of it if you are going to free yourself up to post more. Our friend Darren Doan, he says, we're not precious, right? Don't be precious. The second you get precious over the lighting or the color correction or the design elements, the second you do that, then it's a trade-off, right?
Right.
You really do want to set a bar, and it's more important for some people than other people. Like with Automotive State of the Union brand, I started off very particular, and in the last 6 months I have taken my foot off the pedal, caring as much about how everything looks, because I know that we need to start getting, I've just watched too much content just literally die in the editing bin. Die.
Hmm.
And in automotive, it like things change so fast. So it's like I had hours and hours of content from a beautiful live event in Philly that I paid a lot of money to make happen, personally, to make happen, right? It was the first live automotive event back from the pandemic in Philly, right between shutdowns,
Hmm.
and had this beautiful venue and, top tier speakers that flew in just for that day. I'm talking like Rhett Riker and Ben Stock and Lundy, right?
Right.
They flew in just for this. And guess
Hmm.
what? We probably released 10% of the content we had. By the
Wow.
time I got around to it, right? I'm like, oh, this is all irrelevant now. Right? It's all irrelevant. Like, I can't post it. You can put it on YouTube for archival. And I've just watched that happen enough now that I'm like, I'm not going to do that again.
I love it. So let's use that to shift gears a little bit. You mentioned Automotive State of the Union. I mean, of course, I see it. I love this machine that you're building. But tell me a little bit about that, and of course the announcement that you guys shared at NADA.
Yeah, I'll go in reverse order. So the announcement we just shared is that the Automotive State of the Union, ASOTU is what I'll call it from now on. We just announced that we have closed an initial round of funding, and all of the 7 investors are notable dealers or general managers in automotive. So we are the only dealer-owned media publisher in the automotive industry, past, present, and maybe future. We'll see. And so we just announced that at the show. We've been working on it for a while. And our philosophy at Automotive State of the Union is basically, there are so many people in the automotive industry that are not paying attention to anything automotive related, right? No newsletters, no subscriptions, no email list, nothing. And
Right.
we talk so much about needing to unlock the talent within the industry and needing to innovate quickly. And we see time and time again that the friction to that growth and innovation is just the lack of a consistent conversation throughout the store. You have owners and executives, GMs paying attention to, some of the top tier media offerings like automotive news, or they have like a CBT subscription. But then once you lose that, when you get out of that, you get into all these other service advisors and salespeople and managers and receptionists and back office people and technologists and BDC folks that don't have real any connection with the industry. And we believe that if we make content that appeals to the broad scope of all of those people, and that is fun to read, and that gets us all talking about some consistent conversation points, we think that lack of friction is going to unlock all sorts of innovation and energy that's already within automotive. We just have to figure out a way to get it out. So that's why these dealers are invested. That's why we knew it was important to involve dealers, because we need our hands in the dirt. And now,
Hmm.
as an ownership team, right, we have easy access to hands in the dirt. And we're not talking about slouches either, right? We're talking about the Brian Kramers and Liza Borches and Brian Benstock and Damon
Right.
Lester, David Long, um, like this is the caliber person we're talking about. So that's our play. So we're a media company now, Automotive State of the Union. It went from like
Yeah.
a little COVID live stream to like, let's figure out what's going on, right? Into let's just stay connected, building community, and here we go. Now we'll see. I'm gonna try to light the
Yeah.
rocket ship.
I think it's tremendous, and I love the concept, and it really, it aligns with something that I think about often, which is it's cool to be uh, a known resource to this pool of people that are already in the know. But what's even cooler, where I think you and I share a very similar vision is, but what about Brenda in Dog Lick, Nebraska,
There
who's
you go.
never gone to a conference, who's never gone to an NADA, who probably doesn't even know that conferences exist. They're just showing up day in and day out to do their job. I
Yep.
want to reach that individual. I want to reach Donette.
Yeah.
I want to reach like, yeah, exactly. And so I love this. We heard Erica Tiffany talking about how we need to be better at sharing with others that this industry is worth working in and
For
building a
sure.
life in and a career in. And so I see this mission that you have with the SODU, and like you said, having real hands in the dirt, so to speak, as a real cool medium to bring information to the people in the industry, like just really get far reaching into the industry. And so I congratulate you guys on that. I think it's super cool.
Yeah, thank you. Erica, her whole I think she's one that said it. I quoted it for the rest of the NADA show.
Hmm.
I wish I knew who said it. Maybe it was Damian Mills. I don't know. But either way, it was at the auto retail forum and they said automotive has no ceiling. A lot of industries have no ceiling. Automotive is one of the few industries that also has no floor, right?
Yes.
And because of that stuck in my brain, and there's so much investment and money and conversation and enthusiasm around technology and platforms, but there's none around like how do we onboard people, right? Maybe you have some hiring technology, but it's so much more impactful when you just ignite the passion inside someone who's already in the industry because they're just going to tell everybody,
Hmm.
and you've probably seen this because, when you go to events and when you meet people, you bring a whole different energy to this industry. And there are so many times I've heard people say to me, you said this to me over the last few weeks. And you said, I didn't realize there was anyone else who thought the same way that I did about this industry. Right.
Hmm.
And there is an amazing thing that happens when you put the beacon up and people realize that they're not alone. It's like in those doomsday movies or those,
Uh-huh.
post-apocalyptic when you see the fire on the mountain, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And you
Yes.
realize like, oh my gosh, someone else survived too. Right. Let's
Yes.
find each other. So I feel like that's what we're doing. And
That
it's a lot
this
of
is
fun.
certainly, yeah, this is certainly a big thing that I've been thinking about since NADA throughout the show, of course. But I love the way that you just articulated that, because it really is. It's like going from feeling like you're alone in the woods to all of a sudden seeing a flame
Oh my
light up, and you're
gosh.
like, "There's a flame," and then seeing one down the road, and more so, I think, than any other time in my career, I'm seeing more and more people rising up and saying, I'm a beacon on a hill. Like, here it is. Here's, and it's so incredibly refreshing. This is probably a good segue into just getting some of your thoughts, as now it's been a few days since the show. What are some of the overarching feelings, thoughts, impressions that have been flowing through your mind since, having all those conversations and getting to hear things like Damien saying that there's no ceiling and there's no floor. And I mean, I picked up on an emphasis around people for sure.
Oh yeah. No, I can
What's your take? What are your big thoughts from NADA?
I fully affirm that inkling and instinct. And even in conversations I've had since NADA with a lot of dealers and people that were there, most people said, I didn't really see anything new, right? I didn't really see any like real significant, substantial shift in innovation, which is
Right.
understandable, right?
Hmm.
Which is understandable. I mean, we saw a lot of, EV charging ports, right? But that's that's not a new innovation, right?
I
It's
saw
just a
you walk through a car wash. That
I
was
did.
new.
I've still That was new for me. I've never walked through a car wash, and that's probably the only place I'll do that. And I did, so I heard that common thread over and over, that I didn't really see anything new. And usually what's tacked on to the end of that is that, but there seems to be a very high attention on culture and recruiting.
Mm,
And I picked up on that from both the dealer and the industry partner side. And parsing that out, like, I think some of that has to do with the fact that many of those people haven't been together in 2 years, right? So the last time they were around the industry or other people in the industry and that energy was 2 years prior at in the
right.
same location.
Hmm.
So I think that probably increases that feeling a little bit. But I've been to many shows in the last 2 years, and I can definitely say the conversations around that, I feel like people are catching on. It's always, hey, your people are your best asset, right? We've heard that for decades, you know, but I do have a deep sense that the retail automotive industry is getting to the point of really embracing it and really believing it is true, not just saying it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way that you put that. It's somebody asked me, might have been Frank Lopes. He asked, well, okay, I'm sitting at this booth all day. What's the kind of buzz topics that you're going to hear out there? And I really just felt the impression to shift the conversation to people because I was picking up on something very, very similar. Um, and and it is refreshing. And I do agree with you. I've thought a little bit about this as well. I was thinking about it on the flight home. Just trying to get clarity for myself. I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's that we're on the heels of a pandemic, and so we're realizing the importance of human touch and all of those sorts of things. But maybe we did need that experience to realize. Well, let me say this. I even noticed in times past where dealers would traditionally or historically turn their badges around so the vendors wouldn't know who they were. I was noticing booths in the far-reaching corners of Hall A, which was like
That's a long walk.
a long walk. They were still doing really well. There was really good traffic. And I thought about, maybe we've just arrived at this place where it's no longer vendor versus dealer. Maybe we're realizing we can't do this without each other. We legitimately need each other to make this business go.
Yeah, that's a great thought. I it's hard for me to benchmark. I've been to NADA show on a dealer badge, on a vendor badge, exhibitor badge, on a speaker badge. This year is my first time on a press badge. So they all had distinctly different experiences for me. And the one I remember very much, my first one, I was on a dealer badge, and I just remember being like hawked down, right? And I'm like, look, I don't even work here, right? Yeah, but the people that do, right? Like doop 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 doop, scan my badge. And this time, granted, I was running around like with a camera crew and a microphone and like a little crazy, so I may have missed it. But
Right.
what I perceive is that, in my limited perception, is that what you said was true. I didn't get that. I didn't get that same like walking through the gauntlet perception of even what was happening around me. And maybe that is a major shift in auto, because you'd be very hard pressed to find a dealer, I think, these days that doesn't realize they need a team of really smart people that aren't going to be their employees
Right.
around them in order to survive.
Yep. It was I felt emphasis on there, and don't get me wrong, this is kind of generalized in what I'm about to say, but I mean, in times past where the narrative has been largely like, oh, you've never sold a car, therefore you don't understand. Or on the flip side, it's like, well, you've never deployed a successful marketing campaign, so you don't understand. It was more like, well, how about we both help each other understand, because knowledge can be acquired,
Yeah.
and if you have a teachable skill set and I have a teachable skill set, why don't we just share the knowledge? One thing I'll just say for those listening, automotive in times past has always had this very, like, we are a competitive industry, But
Sure.
I really do think we're coming around to this idea of, but the person we're competing against really is ourselves. We're we're competing against our own company to be a little bit better today than we were yesterday. And in so doing, one thing I'll just say I think is so refreshing. In times past, like, don't get, I get it. I was early to the game on podcasting, but it's funny in those years since people go, is it okay if we start a podcast? I'm like,
Right.
dude, let's roll. Let's
Please
go, man.
do.
What do you want to know? What can I help you with to accomplish your goal? Which
Yes.
is so different. And so I thought it was really cool firsthand where you're a juggernaut and I've got an established presence in automotive for people to see both of us rolling through and freely giving of
Yeah.
ourselves and how cool it was. Like, magic happens, I guess, is what I want to say to those listening. Magic happens when you can just say, the time I've been doing this is irrelevant in contrast to what I hope to learn moving forward.
Oh, that's good.
So to sit here, like, for me, where people are like, you've got it all figured out, for me to just vulnerably go to your team and be like, I got no freaking clue what I'm doing. And they'd be like, dude, and they would just so freely open their phone. They're like, okay, download this app. And after you download this app, you're going to do it. And I'm like, this is what it's all about, guys. This is actually what this industry is about. What's your take?
100%. It's like this is where it's an abundance mentality, right? It's understanding that there is more than enough, right? Our friend and my business coach Dave Meltzer he says there are people that approach the day with not enough, just enough, or more than enough,
Mm,
and it's that more than enough mentality that actually allows you to perceive more than you ever would. Because when you're worried about protecting your just enough or fighting in this mentality, like there's not going to be enough for all of us, I have to get mine. Your focus has been narrowed, right, on survival. When if you're like the mentality like, hey, there's more than enough podcast listeners, there's more than enough
right.
social media views, there's more than enough, for me to give. I can give you everything I have and know that there's a lot more for me out there too. Once you do that and you start moving through the world like that, you actually are able to openly perceive. Your perceptors and your receivers are all on now, and you're going to pick up things that you never would have when, instead of just worrying about that there's a linebacker running toward me, and you narrow your vision and that's all I have to concentrate on, and you get tackled and I duck, right? To bring that back around. There is a video, by the way, of Glenn Lundy coming in hot, and
Uh,
just before he comes in, I duck and he levels Michael. And I didn't even realize that happened until Glenn showed me. He's like, this is what kind of friend Paul Daly is. Right.
yeah, this is, yeah, he broke it apart quicker, like faster than anybody. He watched it. He's like, wait, rewind. And he immediately, I had to throw in the Karen looking for an insurance claim fall
Oh,
to the
no, because
ground.
you
Like,
landed on your feet and then you hit the ground and then you rolled over several times. Yeah, it was good. It was good. It was a little LeBron moment.
it's so true. This idea of, in business, we tend to love these inspirational quotes. A rising tide lifts all boats. We love the sound of that.
You have the best voice to read inspirational quotes.
It is so much different in application. But I feel like, people that have come to me and they're like, I saw you doing so much stuff with Paul and his crew. What's that all about? And it's so easy for me to just say, because I support what they're doing. Like, and to understand, you don't think that they're supporting me by allowing me into that ecosystem to be a part of that as well. This is what collaboration looks like. It's not, to your point, preserving what I've been able to keep. It's literally saying, hey, we see value in you and you see value in me. Can we do something together to, like, you could have easily been like, oh no, we're competing against the dealer playbook. Therefore, we cannot do anything with Michael because we need to show that we can stand on our own. We don't need anybody. Or I could have easily done the same thing.
Like, no,
That
no,
is
no, that's
such
my brand. I can't
That's my brand. What does it
mix
mean if I bring in a quote unquote competitor? It's like, dude, we're not competitors. We're collaborators.
way.
We're in this together. How can we be in the same industry and on a different team?
Well, geez, I mean, that's a whole other layer. I mean, yeah, it's funny. It's funny. You and I both have strangely similar agencies. I didn't even realize that. Like, it was just our last trip, and I'm just like, so tell me about your business, right? Like,
Right.
I know you're from the podcast, but you obviously have a business, right?
Hmm.
When we talk about it, we realize we both have very similar businesses, and it's like, Glenn Pash has done a great job. Did a good job of shaping my thinking on this years ago.
Hmm.
Because if you ever go to one of their events, like one of the Pash events, DMSC is
Right.
is one of the main ones, and they have a PCG as an agency, and they have all these other agencies that show up, stream companies,
Right.
and Glenn's like, if we just got a fraction of the percent of new clients that are out, like he goes, I'd be doing cartwheels. You know what I mean? I'm not looking for 70 new clients, but if I get 4 and we go home with 4, he goes, our team is stoked, right? And that's that abundance mentality. I talked to a dealer at NADA, and he said, Ford dealer. And so we were talking about, what decision is he going to make? Is he going to be Ford Blue and sell ICE vehicles, or just go E, or do both? Because if are going to sell electric vehicles, you have to make an investment
Right.
in order
Right.
to do that.
Hmm.
So he's going to do both. And he said, if I really want to do this right, I should have all of the competitive vehicles on site. I'm going to buy one of the competitive cars. And so when people come, I want to teach them how to operate an EV. And then I'm going to let them see all the differences and nuances in person. I'm going to be the one that walks them through it.
Yep.
And that mentality of like, oh, right, because there's a lot more to be gained in being the one that people trust as they learn about EVs and onboard them than just being like, no, 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 don't go anywhere else. Here's the one you need to buy. And that kind of is indicative of what we're talking about right now. Like there's an element of thinking bigger than just
Yes.
playing defense, right? Again, it's back to defense, right? It's like if I'm
If I
spending
look,
time to make
yeah,
sure people don't know about Michael Cirillo because, right?
right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
what does that do? What does that do for me? It just limits me.
And there's a couple of thoughts I have on that. I think of if I were to open our TV console, I'm not just going to see one workout DVD. I'm going to see multiple from multiple different people. And there's this part of our human nature where we make room for the things that we enjoy with abundance. So, for example, it was funny. I remember when we were primarily a print publishing house, and we were making the transition into digital and kind of getting away from print. We were still in this phase where we're like, no, we need to validate print. Like we need to go heavy on this because everybody's thinking digital and print's going to go away. And I saw this keynote from somebody, one of the editors in chief at oh shoot, one of the big Condé Nast. And at the time she said, human beings don't replace, they make room for.
Mm,
And she said, for example, radio was supposed to kill the theater, TV was supposed to kill the radio, movies were supposed to kill TV, cinema was supposed to kill TV, and the internet was supposed to kill them all. Yet here we are, Broadway. We love going to live theater. We still Sirius XM is still posting profits
right.
in radio. The new age of radio, podcasting has emerged, and people are realizing, no, I still love listening. There is still a place where I only
That's a
want audio
great
listening.
insight because I still consume everything that you just said.
Exactly. There's still room. We actually make room for all of these things in a similar way to your point about an abundance mindset. There is so much room. One of the things I love about automotive is there is room for a company to have 17,000 clients, and there is room for a solopreneur to have 4 clients and be happy.
Yeah. And
It's
and the
so
clients are
tremendous to
happy
me.
too. And it's a good fit for the clients too. It is.
Exactly.
Man,
100%.
I love that mentality. I love it
Man,
because
I love this conversation. I love hanging out and chatting with you. How can those listening learn more about Asodu?
yeah, just go to asotu.com. That's ASOTU.com. We have a daily email Monday through Friday that we put our heart and soul into. If at the very least, if you don't learn a little something, we hope you'll at least get a little laugh out of
You
our
will.
very carefully curated gift collection and little telling it like it is, slightly snarky, but with heart.
Yes.
Commentary to all the day's news. So asodu.com, and then kind of like go into the rabbit hole from there.
I love it. And can I leave you with this parting? You know, people get tired at NADA. So you had asodunada.com, I think.
Yes.
Don't ask me why. The first day we were actually sitting in the Auto News retail forum, and I'm looking down and I'm reading Asotuna, duh. And I'm like, Asotuna, duh. I'm like, what in the flip is this? And then I'm like, oh, it's Asodu NADA. That is Asotuna, duh.
So tuna.
Anyways, man, love you, appreciate you, and so glad to have you on the show today.
I'll talk to you soon, my friend.